අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT Mobitel දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday, the 14th of September 2023. Review number 1. The first review of the extended funding facility program with the IMF begins in Colombo today. Minister expresses confidence for second tranche.
මෙම සමාලෝචනය සම්පූර්ණ වුණාට පස්සේ අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන දෙවැනි වාරිකය ලංකාවට ලබා ගැනීම.
Incoming pilots. Sri Lankan Airlines looks to recruit foreign pilots over a severe dearth in the local cadre. Coconut versus tea. Coconut exports are poised to take over gross earning revenue as the highest earner in the country over the tea sector.
For exports, we use about 25 to 30%. And this industry has a potential to bring, if you really play it nicely, or rather carefully, it can be about 1.5 billion to 2 billion export.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. හොඳම මෙලට කල් පවතින වහරයක්.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to today's edition of AdaDerana's English News, First at 9. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Let's take a look at your top story for this evening. The first review of the International Monetary Fund on the $2.9 billion Extended Fund Facility, or EFF, approved for Sri Lanka commenced in Colombo today. The review is expected to last 2 weeks, with the final meeting scheduled for the 26th of September under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Addressing the media, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe reiterated that the successful completion of the first review will help Sri Lanka unlock the second tranche of the EFF, which approximately amounts to $330 million.
A 10-member delegation headed by the International Monetary Fund's Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Peter Brewer, arrived in Sri Lanka last night to conduct the first review of the Extended Fund Facility arrangement, which Sri Lanka secured in March this year. This morning, the inaugural meeting to assess Sri Lanka's progress regarding the implementation of the new economic reforms proposed by the IMF commenced at the Presidential Secretariat. Representing the Sri Lankan government, officials including State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe, President's Senior Advisor on National Security and Chief of Staff Sagala Ratnayaka, Secretary to the President Saman Ekanayaka, Treasury Secretary Mahinda Sirivardhana and Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe participated in the discussions. The discussions will last for a period of 2 weeks from today, with the final discussion of the review scheduled for the 26th of September under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
අද පෙරවරුවේ අපි ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදලේ විශ්ීරණ ණය පහසුකම සම්බන්ධව පළවෙනි සමාලෝචනය ආරම්භ කරා. මෙම සමාලෝචනය සම්පූර්ණ වුණාට පස්සේ අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන දෙවැනි වාරිකය ලංකාවට ලබා ගැනීම. දේශීය ණය ප්‍රශස්ත කරන වැඩසටහන ක්‍රියාත්මක කරමින් පවතිනවා. ඒකේ තව අධියරක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමට තියෙනවා. ඒ අධියර ඉදිරි සති කිහිපය තුළ ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙයි. ඒ වගේම විදේශීය ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගතකරණයට දේශීය ණය ප්‍රශස්ත කරන වැඩසටහන අවසන් කිරීම ඉතාම වැදගත්.
සමතුලිත පළවෙනි කාර්යයේ ආපු යෝජනා අපි ඉෂ්ට කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
බහුතරයක් ඒ කාරණා සම්පූර්ණ කරලා තියෙනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම සමහර කාරණාවලදී අධිකරණමය කටයුතු සිදු වෙච්ච හින්දා අපිට අනපනත් සම්මත කර ගැනීමේ සුළු ප්‍රමාදයක් ඇති වුණා. එතකොට ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි ඒ අදාළ පාර්ශවයන් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඒ බව දැනුම් දීලා තිබ්බේ.
The Employees Provident Fund has submitted an offer to exchange the portfolio of their treasury bonds under the Domestic Debt Optimization Program. The Central Bank Monetary Board is of the view that with the proposed debt exchange and other reforms being implemented by the government, the sustainability of public finance will be restored with its ability to service its debt. Subsequently, the EPF tendered 2.66 trillion rupees face value of treasury bonds for debt exchange, including an additional 1.49 trillion rupees in exchange of the minimum participation requirement, considering its comparative benefits to the fund. The Employees Provident Fund informed its members that as an eligible participant and with the approval of the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, it has submitted an offer to exchange the portfolio of treasury bonds of the EPF under the Domestic Debt Optimization Programme with regards to the invitation made by the Ministry of Finance, Economic Stabilisation and National Policies following a resolution adopted by Parliament. The Central Bank Monetary Board is of the view that with the proposed debt exchange and other reforms being implemented by the government, the sustainability of public finance will be restored with its ability to service its debt. The CBSL stated that the Monetary Board was also aware that unless debt sustainability is restored without undue delay, there is a high risk of the government not being in a position to fully service obligations on the pre-exchange bonds held by the EPF, leading to serious and adverse consequences to the EPF. As such, opting for the DDO was in the best interest of the members of the EPF based on the two options available, given that a large share of EPF's assets is invested in treasury bonds. It is also important to note that after the participation in the DDO, the current balances of EPF members will not be reduced, and the fund will be able to distribute at a minimum of 9% per annum return to its members in the foreseeable future. The Monetary Board of the CBSL, as the custodian of the EPF, having considered the two options available, decided to opt for the debt exchange offer with a long-term view keeping in mind the best interests of the members of the fund. Accordingly, the EPF tendered 2.66 trillion face value of treasury bonds for debt exchange, including an additional 149 trillion rupees in excess for the minimum participation requirement considering its comparative benefits to the fund. The CBSL statement stated that the government has accepted the same and issued new treasury bonds to the EPF with an equivalent face value. Minister of Foreign Affairs, President's Counsel Ali Sabri says that the government is expecting to develop cooperation with member states of the Indian Ocean Rim Association or IORA to improve connectivity whilst adopting measures to reposition Sri Lanka as a hub in the region. He made these comments while addressing the media today to brief the upcoming ministerial meeting of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, scheduled to be held in Colombo from the 10th to the 11th of September under the chairmanship of Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, Acting Additional Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Shanika Dissanayake, said that Sri Lanka plans on obtaining assistance to develop the climate change university that will be established in Kotmale from the IORA member states.
Sri Lanka, as we all know, as a unique location, historically has understood in the path of economic development and regional collaboration and global collaboration. So, in order to make it viable, in order to kind of make use of its unique opportunities, Sri Lanka need to make use of its location. That is why we are trying to connect to the world, to become a trading hub, to become a naval hub, and also to become an air transportation hub. So, for us to do that, we need to continue to connect to the world. Location is nothing unless there is connection. So, we are trying to exploit that location to the advantage of Sri Lanka. So we look forward to have a very interesting discussion here in Colombo and visibility to this very important event. Sri Lanka proposed to hold a summit, that means leaders of these countries next year in Colombo.
If you take IORA as a whole, there are 6 priority sectors that actually define the association. So the 6 priority areas are maritime safety and security, trade and investment, disaster risk management, academic science and cooperation, and then there are 2 other cross-cutting areas that IORA actively focuses on, and those are the women's empowerment as well as the blue economy. So there is a lot of activities that have taken place under those 6 priority areas and the 2 cross-cutting areas. So we look forward to broadening those areas during our chairmanship and also looking at the sectors of climate change. Sri Lanka has established an International University of Climate Change in Kotmale, and we look forward to expanding the capacity with assistance from the member states of IORA as well as the 11 dialogue partners.
With the IORA also taking place in the same way because it concerns the ocean environment. How important is this arrival with the meeting of the IORA?
We have discussed that. I think we don't get involved in that directly. There are organizations which work on research. So basically you need to talk to them. It is they who decide what is the importance of this. And once we get all the information from line agencies, we discuss and then clear. So as at now, we have not finalized the dates or engagement yet.
Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, yesterday announced that another meeting transpired with the United States Agency for International Development and the management consultancy agency, PwC, on the reforms to be potentially adopted at the state-owned Ceylon Electricity Board. The minister said that discussions were held in anticipation of a transfer scheme to allocate the assets, liabilities and human resources of the Ceylon Electricity Board to successor companies after following reforms. The minister further added that a discussion regarding reforms to the country's power sector also took place with the Canadian ambassador to Sri Lanka, Eric Walsh, yesterday.
With the ongoing economic crisis, Sri Lanka is adopting measures to reform and restructure state-owned enterprises to minimize costs to the government and increase their revenue. In a next message, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara said another meeting regarding the ongoing CEB reform transition plans was held today with the United States Agency for International Development, PwC India and PwC Sri Lanka, the management consultant along with the Ceylon Electricity Board Reform Secretariat yesterday. The minister said that discussions took place to prepare a transfer scheme as required by the Electricity Act to allocate the assets, liabilities and human resources of the CEB to successor companies. He added that the development agencies such as the Asian Development Bank, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, the World Bank and USAID have been coordinating with the Ministry of Power and Energy in assisting and implementing different aspects of the proposed CEB reforms. Meanwhile, Canadian Ambassador to Sri Lanka Eric Walsh called on Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara to discuss the power sector reforms and policies. The minister stated that discussions regarding CEB reforms, renewable energy plans and policies, interconnectivity with India and regional electricity grids, experiences of interconnectivity with USA and Canada, and technical assistance to Sri Lanka to implement said reforms took centre stage at the discussion. In the meantime, in another ex-message, Minister Wijesekara announced that the first cargo shipment of coal for the 2023-2024 season started unloading at the Norachole power plant yesterday. Sri Lanka is scheduled to get 40 consignments of coal for the season, according to the minister, with 4 consignments scheduled to be unloaded in September 2023 and expects to complete the total amount by May 2024.
At a time when Sri Lanka is on the hunt to develop the country's export industry, Sri Lanka's coconut milk manufacturers president Randhiva Malalasuriya said that the coconut export industry has the potential to earn about $1.5 billion, surpassing the country's highest agri-based export revenue earner, the tea sector. Meanwhile, Export Development Board Chairman Dr. Kingsley Bernard said that the board is on the lookout for more markets for exporters of the country to penetrate. However, the establishment of a strong brand for local products in order to gain market shares globally is paramount. Speaking to Indivari Amawata during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, industry leaders and officials discussed the way forward for Sri Lanka through higher exports.
What's the current state of the export industry for coconut?
As we have been learning for years, the coconut, tea and rubber are the contributing agricultural products of exports in this country. So it's specifically about coconut. I mean, last year total exports related to coconut is almost like $817 million. Year before it was a little bit more than that actually. Last it was little about 50-60 million lesser than the year before, or like 2021. So in this 800 million on average, 850 million on average, there are mainly 2 types of coconut products, non-kernel exports and kernel exports. For exports, we use about 25 to 30%. And this industry has a potential to bring, if you really play it nicely or rather carefully, it can be about 1.5 billion to 2 billion export revenue. That's something doable. So at least 1 billion is doable if you play it at least much better than this. So while spending 25% of the crop, we were able to go up to about 850 to 1 billion. If I compare that one with tea export about 90% of the crop and able to go around about 1.2 to 1.3 billion.
But what's stopping us? Is it domestic consumption or is it lack of sufficient crop?
Yeah, it's a mix of the domestic consumption plus we have a very limited coconut production. So altogether we have about on average about 3 billion nuts on average. If you look at the statistics last 5-10 years, we are at the average, or rather we always report 3 billion. If you compare that one in India, so they have grown so much in last 10 to 5 years time, where they started about 15-16 billion, now they are 20 billion nuts. So the production is one of the challenge, and then of course the local consumption. We consume about good 60 to 65% of the total production. So that's why we need to play it right and improve certain efficiency of agriculture field. And if you allocate another 10 to 15% of the coconut production to export industry, so this can easily go up to about 1.5 billion.
How do we address the question of capacity, and for other industries, the need for more markets, to penetrate more markets?
We have capacity in most of our products. Now, if you look at Sri Lanka, in the region, Sri Lanka has acquired the image of being a country where it can produce organic products compared to so many other countries in the region. So this is one advantage we have. Sri Lanka has a range of good products for the export market, but we don't have good brands. So therefore, Export Development Board has a project to introduce a Sri Lankan brand for these products. So we identify the worthy products, potential products for that brand, and then we are going to promote that brand. So these are some of the ways that we are trying to access the market. And also for certain products, we are involved in capacity development of the farmers, and also quality development, and also reduction of post-harvest losses.
Minister of Health Keheli Rambukwala stated that the government has decided to recall retired doctors and specialists for service on contract basis. The decision has been made in order to address the prevailing doctor shortage at hospitals. Minister Rambukwala said that a proposal addressing the decision would be submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers for approval. A substantial number of doctors and specialists in Sri Lanka have recently migrated overseas in search of better prospects, remuneration and quality of life. As a result, operations within a number of hospitals locally have been severely compromised. Despite the strike launched by the Sri Lanka Railways Locomotive Operating Engineers Union being called off yesterday following a meeting with the Prime Minister, passengers continue to be inconvenienced due to inadequate trains and train engineers. Minister of Transport and Highways Bandula Gunawardena meanwhile confirmed that an expert committee was appointed to look into the measures that can be explored for the solutions to the demands of the union, adding that he has given necessary directives to provide solutions within the next 2 months. A strike was launched by the Sri Lanka Railways Locomotive Operating Engineers Union in demand of solutions to several unfulfilled key requirements. The strike came despite a special gazette notification issued per the directive of President Ranil Wickremesinghe to declare railway service as an essential service with immediate effect. Subsequently, the Sri Lanka Railways Department in a statement said that any railway drivers who fail to report for work will be treated as having voluntarily resigned. However, a discussion yesterday was held at the Prime Minister's office under the patronage of Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena to explore a solution to the issue.
අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවා නියෝග පිළි නොපැද්දහම ඒ සඳහා අදාළ වෙන නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා.
Following the discussion, the Sri Lanka Railways Locomotive Operating Engineers Union called off the strike.
ඉදිරි සති දෙකක කාලය ඇතුළත මෙම ගැටලුව කඩිනින්ම විසඳන්න ඔවුන් මැදිහත් වෙනවා කියලා ලිපියකින් දැනුම් දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒ අනුව ඊයේ දින රාත්‍රියේදී අපි මේ වෘත්තීය ක්‍රියාමාර්ගය අත්දැකීම් ලැබුවා. මොන මොන කාරණා සම්බන්ධයෙන්ද බලාපොරොත්තු පිළිතුරු ලබා දෙනවා කියලා කියනවා. ගන්න පුළුවන් හොඳටම විසඳුම තමයි රාජ්‍ය සේවා කොමිෂන් සභාවට මේක දාලා බඳවා ගැනීම පටිපාටියක් හදලා මේක බඳව ගන්න. දුම්රිය දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවෙන් කිව්වනේ සේවයට එන්න නැත්නම් සේවය අත්හැර ගියාසේ සලකනවා කියලා. ඔබතුමාලා බය වුණාද? නෑ බය වෙන්න අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නෑ. දැන් අපි මුල සිටම ඉල්ලපු පිළිතුර තමයි මේ ලබා දීලා තියෙන්නේ. ඔව් දැන් මේ වෙනකොට ඔබතුමාලට දැඩි චෝදනාවක් කළා කරනවා දුම්රිය වෛද්‍ය නිසා ශිෂ්‍යෙක් ජීවිතේ නැති වුණා කියලා. මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් සංගමයක් හැටියට අපි කනගාටුව ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා. මේ තත්ත්වය වර්ජනයක් අවස්ථාවේ විතරක් තියෙන තත්ත්වයක් නෙමෙයි. සාමාන්‍ය සතියේ දිනයක වුණත් විශාල දුම්රිය ප්‍රමාණයක් අවලංගු වෙනවා. හේතුව තමයි මේ දුම්රිය රීදුරන්ගේ හිඟතාවය. ඒකට මේක දැනටත් කාර්යාලය වේලාවන් තුලදී මේ දුම්රියන් වල වහලේවල්
Passengers, however, continue to be inconvenienced though the strike was called off. According to the Deputy General Manager of Railway Traffic, M.J. Indipolage, 44 commuter trains were in operation this morning as planned. However, 35 routes were cancelled. He added that train drivers who engaged in the strike yesterday also reported to work after 8 a.m. this morning.
රාත්‍රී සහ අද අලුයම් කාලේ දුම්රිය රියදුරන් සේවයට වාර්තා කර නොතිබීම හේතුවෙන් දුම්රිය ගමන් වාර කිහිපයක් අද උදෑසනත් අවලං කරන්න සිදු වුණා.
Passengers continue to be inconvenienced due to delays in train operations as well as inadequate trains.
ඍජු තීරණයක් අරගත්තා මේ අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවාවක් බවට පත් කරනවා කියලා මේ වර්ජනයත් සමගම මේගොල්ලෝ බය වෙලාද රස්සාවට ආවේ?
නෑ බයද නැද්ද කියන එක නෙමෙයි නීතියට ගරු කරන්න එපා.
දුම්රිය දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව අනාගතයේදී මොන වගේ විය යුතුද?
ඒ විය යුත්තේ කුමක්ද යන්න පිළිබඳ විශේෂඥ කමිටුවක් පත් කරලා තියෙනවා. මම මාස 2ක් ඇතුළත තීරණ ලබා දෙන්න කියලා තියෙන්නේ. විශේෂඥ කමිටු වාර්තාව ලබා ගැනීමෙන් පසු ඒ අවශ්‍ය පියවර ගන්න ඕන.
මේක පෞද්ගලීකරණය කරා නම් හොඳයි කියලා බොහෝ ජනතා මතයක් තියෙනවා.
අපි බලමු රටේ අනාගතයට යහපත් වෙන තීරණයකට පොදුවේ එළඹෙන්න අපි මහන්සි වෙලා වැඩ කරමු.
Meanwhile, the last rites of the 18-year-old who died after falling off the roof of a moving train due to train congestion was conducted this evening. Sanjeeva Kumara, alias Ganemulla Sanjeeva, a major player in organised crime, was apprehended at the Bandaranaike International Airport upon arrival to Sri Lanka from Nepal. The Negombo Magistrates Court allowed Ganemulla Sanjeeva to be detained and interrogated for a period of 90 days. Meanwhile, in Mullaitiyu, the number of complete human bones discovered at the mass grave excavation site in Kokkotudue has increased to 9. With that, here are some updates from around the island in brief.
Organised criminal kingpin Sanjeeva Kumara, alias Ganemulla Sanjeeva, was reportedly arrested at the Bandaranaike International Airport yesterday. The criminal was apprehended upon his arrival to Sri Lanka from Nepal. Sanjeeva was produced before the Negombo Magistrate Court, where the court allowed him to be detained and interrogated for 90 days. In other news, the number of complete human bones found in mass grave excavations in Mullaitiyu, Kokkutuduai has increased to 9. A cyanide capsule and 2 number plates identifying suspected LTTE members were also found at the site. Meanwhile, in Norelia, a tree collapsed in the Lakshapana catchment area on the Norton Bridge Kottalena main road. The incident reportedly disrupted traffic on the road. Severe damage was reported to electric and telephone wire systems in the area.
Business news after a short break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back. Sri Lankan Airlines obtained government approval to recruit pilots of foreign identity yesterday. Chief Executive Officer of the national carrier, Richard Nuttall, explained that the recruitment of foreign pilots comes in a bid to address the prevailing pilot shortage the national carrier is facing. In June 2023, the Civil Aviation Authority said that Sri Lankan Airlines have sought permission to hire foreign pilots, noting that the airline is facing a serious shortage of pilots. According to the CAA, a large number of Sri Lankan aviation industry experts and pilots have migrated in the past few months to join foreign airlines that offer much higher salaries. Recently, the Airline Pilots Guild of Sri Lanka said that the national carrier requires at least 330 pilots to function at full capacity for the designated flights. However, they said that over 70 pilots have resigned from the airline since 2022, with many more resignations pending, resulting in a depletion of pilots. The Colombo Bourse closed in green, aided by consumer staples and industrial stocks. The Colombo Stock Exchange All-Share Price Index closed 0.82% higher at 11,532.69 points. Expo Lanka Holdings and Selinco Insurance were the top gainers on the index, up 1.8% and 9.5% respectively. Trading volume on the All-Share Price Index fell to 51.2 million shares from 62.4 million shares in the previous session. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 climbed 0.84% to close at 3,264.42 points. Market turnover fell to 1.45 billion rupees from 1.79 billion rupees in the previous session, with the capital goods sector being the top contributor and the food, beverage and tobacco sector being the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 42.7 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 1.43 billion rupees. Let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. The Tea Exporters Association appreciates the government's actions on delaying the repeal of the simplified value-added tax, saying that the action may have forced exporters to increase prices, affecting the global competitiveness of Ceylon tea. Meanwhile, Agarapatana Plantations said that it plans to invest in tea tourism, using its own estates as a growth strategy, as the global tourism industry is still rebounding. With that, let's take a look at our corporate news segment for the day.
The Tea Exporters Association appreciates the actions of the government to delay the removing of SVAT until 2025, confirming that the industry was concerned as there was no output VAT to offset the input VAT, and some part of the VAT component may have to be factored into the price of export products, affecting competitiveness of Ceylon tea price-wise. The association also requested the Inland Revenue Department to have consultations with industry stakeholders to formulate a practical VAT refund regime so that decisions such as bringing in smallholder tea farmers, factory owners and producers under the VAT net would not have an adverse impact on the entire sector and the forex earnings. Meanwhile, Agarapatana Plantations said that it will be investing in tea tourism as its estates are located in areas of the country with many tourist attractions in the vicinity as a part of the firm's growth strategy. The firm believes that the company has the potential to develop a high-quality tourism product as global tourism revives. In the meantime, Commercial Bank of Ceylon said, pertaining to a proposal establishment of an Employee Share Option Plan 2023 ordinary voting shares, an extraordinary general meeting for the purpose of obtaining shareholder approval in relation will be held on 6th of October at 2:30 p.m. at the Kingsbury Hotel.
That wraps up my bulletin for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow at the same time for more news. For now, this is Jonathan Benedict signing off from AdaDerana's Studio 24, wishing you a blessed Friday ahead. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.